If we have that method of delivery where you go to a particular place, then you will have to set up a whole set of organizational structures. So the PDFs. Now the issue, economic analytical issue is that the greater the differential between the market price and the subsidized price, greater the potential to earn economic rent by diverting the subsidized goods into the other area. And therefore, how that incentive structures work is extremely important. It's part of design, but it's also part of service delivery. So the alternative, for example, to having an identified shop that says we are a PDS shop is that a voucher is given at a subsidized price. So one can buy 100 rupees worth of food vouchers for 65 rupees. But they pay 65, they get 100 rupees, 35 is the subsidy, they can buy anywhere they like. This is the kind of food stamp program that the United States runs. The argument made against it by some analysts is that in many parts of rural India, there are no real alternative places to shop, so we must have the PDFs. Now, if that argument is accepted, and I regard that as a failure of the government to develop those places enough where you don't have even the basic provision store, but even if we accept it, that would imply that we could continue with different systems, where we could have one area, some districts of the country where there is PDS, some districts where there is an alternative service delivery method, and so on. So there is no reason why we must have ideologically fixed mind, and a lot of debate is going on PDS or not. And the new system, the direct benefit transfer, has been criticized by some by saying that, oh, there is no PDS in these areas. So there is a way to get a pragmatic way to, or practical way to try to have different arrangements depending on the circumstances, but the key is to improve those circumstances so that you are not reliant on PDS forever. The third method of delivery are the conditional cash transfers, where the government will say, if you send your child to school, or if you take mother for an institutional delivery, then we will give you a certain subsidy, often after the fact. So that if a child has attended schooling 80% of the time, then in the next semester or next term, the government will provide a certain subsidy. That's why it's called a conditional cash transfer, where your cash transfer is based on the fulfilling of the conditions. Now, some of it we do that in terms of like the JNNA URM, where there are conditions, and some of those conditions are quite stringent, and the urban bodies don't get the money, though politically becomes difficult not to give the money. So they are not enforcing some of those conditions as strictly as perhaps they intended for a variety of reasons. But that this is another method, conditional cash transfer, just the cash transfer to increase income, and you can deliver it through the specialized shops that do that, or you can deliver it through through vouchers where there is greater possibility of contestability. And I think the contestability is important, because why economists find that monopoly, which the government claims that only they can provide in many areas, that why monopoly is not so desirable is because it doesn't provide us with information about what the alternatives can do. So once you have alternative, until 1997, when we had only LIC, we didn't know what the other insurance companies could do. So now that we got the other insurance companies, we got to manage that competition, and there is a degree of contestability. So we need more contestability in policies, in ideas, in the way we experiment, in the way that we proceed. And we don't want the best to be the enemy of the country. And one of the very clear research finding that comes out, that the policies that are made in the name of the poor are poor policies, because the structure is not right. Today's poor won't be tomorrow's poor. Your objective should be to make today's poor into non-poor. And if for some reason today's non-poor become poor, to have a mechanism whereby they can be helped. So poor is not a static concept, and the poverty is not a static concept. There is an absolute poverty, relative poverty, and as we move up the income scale, we increasingly need to move from the absolute basic minimum subsistence level type of poverty to relative poverty, relative to the median income and others. This is how many countries have gone. So now what is being proposed? What's being proposed is the following, that there will be certain schemes, 31 schemes I think, of the government and the central government. They will select few districts and they will roll out the direct benefit transfer based on Aadhaar cards and other technology availability. The last mile, that is to the final reaching of the beneficiary, is going to be done by the business correspondent or the banking correspondent, which is a weak link we know currently, and the weak link is sought to be retained in this particular method as well. Now, one very important technical point, that the vision is that the beneficiaries will be identified on the basis of Aadhaar, which is a resident-based identification scheme. But there is a national population registry, which is a citizen-based identification scheme. So big question that we have to ask, do we want the subsidy rupees to go to the non-residents or to the non-citizens, or do we want to give it just because they happen to be resident and they got Aadhaar, that they should be given something? So the issues, that particular issue must be explicitly addressed as part of the design, because it has impact on cost and the acceptability and so on. Now very quickly, what are the pros and cons of the proposal? The proposal is just method of delivery. I think you are very clear that method of delivery. What they have proposed is that it will be about 1 month where they will experiment, and after 1 month they will try to roll it out, and by the end of 2013 they hope to do it on a nationwide basis. Okay? So what are the pros? The pros are that there is a potential value in experimentation and in evidence base. So instead of being rigid and say we just do what we are doing now, when evidently it is not working as well as the policymakers and others hope for, what they want to do is to at least try out some new experimentation, base it on technology. They are willing to experiment and look at the evidence, hopefully, and try to refine it further. And they want to develop an architecture whereby eventually the state services or state subsidy programs and others can also be rolled out on the similar platform. Hopefully that will give us the idea as to how many schemes are directed at one particular group and what is the combined effect on them and how much cost the taxpayers are bearing for the beneficiaries that are intended. But this is positive that there is a potential value of experimentation, there is gathering of evidence as to how it works, monitoring, and potentially you can realize, can make online corrections once you make. Now this is potential, but it is still pro. Second is could reduce multiple drawing of benefits by same individuals, which may be occurring, but only if you strengthen the record keeping system. And so if the old age pension scheme is, if the death registry is not really strengthened, then that kind of benefit cheating may not be possible to the desired extent. Role of technology is recognized. So I think this is a good start that we are now saying we want to deploy technology. What has happened is our IT companies have made rest of the world competitive and some of that competitiveness against us. But now the government is realizing that we must use our IT techniques and technology to benefit and to improve our own processes. And it could assist in widening access to financial services because some of it is linked to the banking accounts and so on. So I see this as pros. Now what are the cons? The cons are that the design of schemes and therefore appropriateness of incentive structures, including the entitlement mentality that some of these have created, have not been addressed. So this is not a fundamental review of what they're doing. This is just a method of delivering the benefit while leaving all the design intact. Second, the inclusion-exclusion errors will continue, we had discussed should benefits go to residents or citizens. Does not address when the benefit should stop, and this is very, very important that we think of poverty in a dynamic sense and not try to identify too rigidly. Here is a BPL, here is not BPL, so on, because you create huge disincentives. You know, if BPL gets all the benefits, but the guy who is working and gets a little bit above says you don't get anything, but pay tax in order to support them, when the combined benefits to the BPL may have larger real income than the guys who are working. And that is the last thing that any country would want to do, which already has a very low income levels and a low labor force participation and low skill levels. It is still scheme based, so these are not combined. There is some attempt now to recognize that maybe NRGA should be combined with other schemes. Skilled labor can come from some other scheme or machinery can come, but the coordination among ministries is still very, very, very difficult, and that has not been articulated in any firm way. The dynamics of fiscal cost over time, as well as creating intergenerational equity and fiscal flexibility issues. Already we have got many states and the central government where very, very little is left after the routine expenditure is undertaken. As a matter of fact, we have a revenue account deficit, as we call it, which basically means that the current revenue is insufficient to meet current expenditure of the salaries and the pensions and the routine expenditure. So how can any organization, including government, continue if their current revenue is less than current expenditure? And that must crimp on the development, those expenditure which are going to make the economy grow. What makes economy grow? One is infrastructure investment. Our agricultural irrigation investment, for example, has not been up to the level that we require. And in most other areas, urban amenities, other infrastructure, power is a very important part of it. So we don't have enough resources, and many of the states also are fiscally very weak. The 13th Finance Commission showed that 19 states out of 35, 28 states plus 7 union territories, so 19 entities have got the own revenue generation divided by their current expenditure at less than the national average of only 62%. Some states are generating own revenue at about 10, 20, 30%. So how can that state really find funding resources to develop? And the fiscal crisis has suggested that the only way to now move on the fiscal front is to get better outcomes from budgetary outlays. So we need to increase the efficiency of expenditure management. And this one doesn't recognize the issue as such. It just focuses on this narrow aspect. So it does not address underlying unsustainability of the growth model. You can't grow through entitlement provisions. The only way you grow is you invest and you deploy knowledge economy, get ideas, and improve the way the inputs are combined. Our organizational abilities, our entrepreneurial abilities. We don't even track how many new businesses are created on a net basis. Business creation minus those businesses that go out. The more churn there is, the better. Because the new businesses are the ones that have new ideas, they create employment, they create experiences, but if you make the things so rigid that the new businesses are not being created, then you are not creating the growth environment. And some of these, it does not really address the growth model aspects that we have. And to apply the knowledge economy concepts that need to be applied to improve productivity. So if we look, for example, in agriculture at our soybean or wheat or rice, our per hectare productivity is far lower than the international average, and within the country there are huge variations, where some states or some districts in the state are showing very encouraging productivity, but the others are lagging behind. But we don't have that mindset that says we learn from each other. And this is where finally I end, that if you want to have a subsidy programs, then we need to create a atmosphere of trust and confidence in each other, so-called social capital. Then only you can sustain the support of these kind of activities. Otherwise, we'll be in a situation where the subsidies will be harder and harder to sustain, and those disappointments could lead to adverse, not just economic, but also social and political consequences. Thank you very much. Sorry.